The Two Men and a Business Continuity Plan podcast. Navigating success through uncertainty.
Hello and welcome to our podcast, beautifully named Two Men and a Business Continuity Plan with Charlie and James. For those of you who've been living on a different planet, who haven't listened to our podcast before, let's find out who we are. Charlie.
So, Charlie McLean Bristol, business continuity person by trade. Own background is military, followed by 2 stints of utilities, water and electricity, not meant to mix, and then had my own consultancy for 18 years, and now joined the firm Data Barracks. So that is me.
Thanks, mate. And me, James McAllister. I come from a policing background with 30 years in the cops. I was lucky enough to work here, there and everywhere on some very exciting things, and then sort of finished my career off in emergency planning, civil contingencies and business continuity. And for the last 12 years, I've run my own consultancy. Charlie and I have known each other about 20 years now. We sort of have bumped into each other constantly, yes, and have been running the podcast for the last sort of 18 months.
Yep.
Plus. Very interesting topic today, very current, very relevant, but could be applied in the future to lots of different circumstances that have hit into the globe economically over the last 20, 30, 40 or even longer years. Because what we're going to look at is food, fuel and panic buying, the precondition problem. So let's start with a simple question. Are we actually panic buying right now, or are we just waiting for it to happen? Because if you look around the shelves, they are mostly full. Fuel is still flowing. I know there's been a few blips over the last few weeks, but at the same time, prices are rising, certainly within oil, fuel, etc. The news is full of geopolitical tension, and people are starting to ask questions. Today, we're talking about something slightly different, not panic buying itself, which would be obvious when it happens, but more importantly, certainly from a business continuity perspective, is if we can recognize what the precondition is that creates it, how business continuity can help manage it. So let's define the problem first. So what do you think, Charlie, we mean by this preconditioned state?
Well, I just say it's where would you be without loo roll, and that's not a question. That is just to be a statement. Where would you be? Let's not go down that road. We don't need to go down that road at all. I think there was a little. I did actually post something on LinkedIn about it must have been about 4 weeks ago when there was that sort of fuel. There was a bit of panic buying around about the fuel. And I took a picture of my back door, having gone to Costco and done the kind of like 3 monthly loo roll and kitchen roll order, and put in, say, am I panic buying? No, not quite yet. But I do think, as we talked about the previous Coast Code, I think there is things to play in here that have not come out, and I think there is going to be some scarcity of stuff. Quite what it is yet, I'm not quite sure, but I do think we ought to keep an eye out for it as business continuity people.
So what do you think the key ingredients of that precondition are? Because is it reality or is it perception?
Oh, it's all about perception. I think it's all about perception, but it does a couple of things there. First of all, we all know fine well, and we've seen this things to do with COVID, people fighting in the aisles about pasta and loo roll again. But,
there is an obsession here, Charlie. I think
it is. I've got bottled water and fuel on my list as well, so I haven't got yes. But I think there is the problem is about our modern supermarket system. We were talking about those sort of bare essentials in life. Is the whole system is predicated on us buying what we normally buy, and everything comes in just in time because with perishable items that the supermarket does want, there might be a scarcity of, avocados next week, so we better get another, 10% or 20% more avocados there because, the good middle classes can't survive without avocados. So they don't do that because, the same people who buy their avocados that always go and buy in your weekly shopping, and they're going to be chucking away. So supermarkets are very, very fine-tuned to providing what we want when we want. And they know when at Christmas we need more turkeys and in the summer we need more barbecues, and they look at the weather and all that sort of stuff. And so if you get a shock in the system and everyone decides, we get the same shocks when everyone decides, you need Spanish pepper for the latest cooking show, and everyone goes mad and buys Spanish pepper. And the one poor Spanish person who goes in to buy their Spanish pepper every month finds there's nothing of it on the shelf because everyone else has bought it. So there is this kind of the system is not used to doing it, and if we want to pay more, they could stock more and throw away more, but none of us want to pay more. So it is the supply chain is very finely tuned.
So is it that the inability to predict and react quickly enough, or is it stupid people like us who knee-jerk react to what we think might happen in the future, and therefore we cause it ourselves because the reality is it isn't really happening, but we just cause it to happen? Because you were quite right. The pre-COVID ridiculous, toilet paper, hand sanitizer that nobody used before COVID, but the moment
so the bloody stocks of it under my sink.
It's ridiculous. I mean, even the National Health Service in the UK said just wash your hands. But it was all that panic,
yeah,
which caused it.
But do you? There's a question for you. Do you? When you hear about these scare things, I'm a business continuity person, so I'm going to be ahead of the game because I'm more finely attuned to the average man or average woman there. So do you say, actually, I'm going to go and fill up my fuel a bit quicker than everybody else, or I'm going to go down and buy a whole load of pasta before everyone else gets there because I'm in the know and I'm watching out there? Or do you kind of really resist the temptation, say, no, I will not do herd instinct. I will not play into my inner caveman, and we'll talk about that in a second. I'll not play into that because I know that if I go and buy this stuff, I am just contributing to what all I think I should know better. Do you know better, or do you?
Well, the problem is it's not knowing better, because once it's started, we're in it.
Yeah.
And you can sit there I mean, I'd love to sit there smugly and say, I wouldn't and I haven't.
Yeah.
But I will and I have. I mean, my sister who lives in Hong Kong during COVID was brilliant because they had it first, clearly. So obviously it happened in China, and Hong Kong got it very. She knew that we were probably going to suffer with things like paracetamol and hand sanitizer, which, as I said, she sent a parcel over, and I've still got some of them left. They're all out of date now, but they were. Yeah. There was, Panadol and this, that, and the other, and a load of hand sanitizers, which we did use, this, that, and the other, because she had it first, and then a month, 6 weeks later, we had it. So she tried to help us out with that. But yeah, we did that. I've still got toilet paper in the loft that I bought during COVID. I mean, God knows what state it's in now, but I was up in the loft for something the other day, and I saw it in the corner, and I thought, crikey, we need to turn that around. Yes, I am going to be there. But I think that, like everybody else.
But one of the things I did actually have a look at when I had a thought about this is as part of our inner primitive being. I think there's quite a lot of our inner primitive being comes out to us in stress and problems, and the same instincts that that made us run even faster from a saber-toothed tiger or woolly mammoth. Yeah, dinosaurs weren't quite around when we were, but the short one with the short
we're
arms.
The dinosaurs, Jolly. We're the dinosaurs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that same instinct is still built into us humans there, and that there is the survival mode that if we can get it, there's a Darwinistic of if we can get it before everyone else, we're going to survive, and all those other people might die, and that's built into us. Famine, scarcity. In those days, if you could go and get the grain, or you could kill the last cow that was there, you would survive where all the other people didn't. So it is built into us. And I
Did you
think
see the guy
scarcity.
in the newspaper the other day? Well, not in the newspaper because I never read newspapers, but
Yeah.
online, who was filling up Tesco bags with fuel and knotting them in his boot. It was.
Yes.
I'm hoping it was AI generated,
Yeah.
but this guy
Yeah.
was filling them up and then
Yeah.
knotting them in his boot. I mean, it could just become ridiculous. But those kind of images of that, empty shelves, potential
Yeah.
fuel queues, things like that. That is the thing that changes human beings into, as we've mentioned him before, good old Professor Steve Peters, the inner chimp, the chimp paradox, which is what you're talking about. It turns us all into cave people.
Yeah, and but there's the herd behavior, the scarcity. Anything that's scarce is very, very, very vulnerable. But I think it's also, if you've got a nice loft full of loo paper, then you can
I'll
then
send
you
some
can.
job.
Yeah. But you have a sense of control. If you think you're in, we're so buffeted for world events. And, if you feel, well, I'm all right, I've got this, I've got that, I've thought about that, it does give you a sort of sense of control to say, if these bad things happen, not quite, I'm all right, Jack, but a little bit of that is to kind of say, well, I feel in control of my destiny, whatever the world buffets at me, I can probably survive it because I've thought about it. So, in a smugness as well, perhaps there of, and we like to, if we feel in control, we feel more relaxed about our surroundings and how we behave and the rest of it.
How do we feel about governments saying, don't panic buy, we are okay, don't worry? Do we trust governments, 2026, do we trust governments when they say that?
Well, I
I don't
tell
mean
you,
us necessarily, but
we'll all be voting, or I presume most of us will be, at least in Scotland and Wales, we'll all be voting in Thursday in the election. And I think one of the things that if you watch anything on the news about it, there is such an antipathy towards government. And I've heard lots and lots of people having conversation. I usually voted for them, but I don't like them. I don't like them. I even dislike them. So I'm voting almost for the least best or the least worst, as opposed to a really enthusiastic. Yeah, of course, people do get enthusiastic, but I'm voting for them because I really believe in it. No, I'm voting for them because all the others are even worse. And I think that there is a loss of, I think it's very much at the moment, there is a loss of deference to authority. There's lost we don't believe what governments we say. So if government says one thing, we almost go out and do the other. And so they say don't panic, we all panic.
Do you think, if the government in the UK at the moment, good old Keir Starmer, came out and said don't panic buy, do you think it would have the other effect because of the current state of politics and where they are in the trust factor?
Yeah. And I think in the end, we voted for them all. And so we get there. But I think there is some practical things we do, because I was kind of have a look at this, is it all doom and gloom? And is it kind of that sort of FOMO, oh, we better get it just in case someone else gets it sort of thing? And I think with if the supermarkets said as soon as they start getting a sniff of there's people panic buying, just rationing items and say, you can only have one of those or three of those or 10 of those or whatever it is. So you can ration things. You can ration things really quickly. So just to say you're only allowed to buy one of them.
In a more business continuity perspective, though, things like, because fuel is potentially going to be one of the biggies, would we then say that, you remember the good old UK national fuel plan that focuses on the emergency services, category 1 responders, businesses? Do you think that's a good thing? Or do you think it once again shows maybe a division
Yeah, I think we should try and stop it getting to that thing. So most of the rationing items, I think one of the other things I read about was restocking visibly. So don't letting there be empty shelves because everyone will go along with their phone and take pictures. So and spread stuff across the shelves. The shelves look busier than they do. And if you do have stock out the back, bring it forward as much as you possibly can, knowing that it's going to take some time to get there. But I do think, of course, we live in a capitalist world, and one of the ways to do fuel rationing is just double the price or triple the price of fuel. Well, soon stop lots of people panic buying it, but then
But
that's the rich.
could you actually do that at the moment and survive? Because it's so
Well,
expensive as it is. Do you
it
think
is,
now the
it is, but it
economy
would.
would? I mean, how far are we theoretically if this happens off large scale civil insurrection?
I'm never a great believer in the civil insurrection because I think we're British and we'd still queue. So there was still queue to do the insurrection. All right, we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, there are riots and people do throw stones at policemen, as you well know. But in terms of the mass breakdown of society, looting, all that kind of stuff, there's some quite good books about where societies do earthquakes and they do hurricanes. And, it very rarely turns to Lord of the Flies out there. The people loot stuff. They're not, on the whole, they loot stuff shops to go and get water and food and nappies and all the things they haven't got. What's the use of a 50-inch telly in the middle of Katrina? Well, and everything's underwater. You loot the shops because you're hungry or you're thirsty, and you go and do that. Of course, that is a generalization. People do loot shops, and people will take advantage of situations. But in a whole, there's quite a good book I read. There's somewhere behind me called "Hell in a Small Place." Something like that. I'll dig it out. And it was all about how societies actually, on the whole, look after each other in when there is very little, and neighbors do share with people. And well, you've been to disasters, and people have, if they have very little, they'll still share it. They'll still share it with their neighbors, and it takes quite a long time for the big machines to 3 or 4 days for the international help to come in. So people have to survive. So you've been to disasters. What's your?
I suppose the greatest example of that was the Philippines.
Yeah, your Philippines
Typhoon
experience.
Haiyan is a great example of the people pulling together in awful conditions, and brought me to tears how good, how nice they were in the event of the conditions they were in. That
Yeah,
even though they had nothing, they were still prepared to offer people like me
yeah.
things. But that's not really where we're at with this, are we? This
No, it's not
is
where we're at with
this is
these.
geopolitical tension, potentially fuel greed, potentially worrying about other nations having the political, sorry, the military might that they might cause
Yeah,
global catastrophes, which then has the ripple effect that it puts us all on edge and makes us worry about things.
yeah.
And I think the Dunkirk spirit is fabulous, but I don't think this arouses the Dunkirk spirit because
Hmm.
it doesn't quite fit the criteria of that. I don't think. I think this is more along potentially, if it's all to do with perception. Most countries in the world aren't happy with the political situation at the moment. This is just another thing that piles another edge on this. How
Hmm.
many can you go before you get a tipping point where people have just had enough? And if we're talking about from a business continuity perspective, it's like distribution. If we're going to think of what's going to happen, if we don't have fuel, we don't have distribution.
No,
You can't get
but
things out there. So even if you want to get things out there and you've got things to get out there, you can't get them out there because there isn't potentially enough fuel. I was sat having my hair cut last week, and somebody was talking about a farmer friend that's spending £800 every 2 days on diesel.
yeah.
It's like, whoa, okay. So, at what point in time either do we put the price up so they can't work, which if agriculture dies, what happens to the rest of us? Or do we, if we limit fuel, what happens there? Staffing, increased pressure on staff. Imagine working in somewhere where your shelves are empty and we do get that panic. You know, I think hostility goes up. I know you mentioned about, you know, we're British. We only have to look at other countries in the world where maybe they aren't quite as placid. France is a great example of the amount of times the French have taken to the streets over things.
Yes. No, the French are more volatile than us, and protesters are more likely to press us, especially groups of people like the farmers. So, yeah, I do think the fuel's an interesting one. How smug is everyone? Not that I have got an electric car now, you know. But then electric cars, actually, you just put electricity in it, which generated from gas, which comes from the same place as the fuel comes from. And you know, there was I think we said, did we say last podcast that Ukraine war killed more in the Horn of Africa than it did the Ukrainians to date because of all the grain that is done and the lack of grain, which provided cheap food for lots of people. And we don't hear too much about that because it's kind of over there and it's not kind of obvious. But I think society does work on fuel, and we are pretty there. But we do have the advantage of working from home, which is, you know, 20 years ago, we couldn't. We all had, if you didn't go to work, you didn't get paid. Whereas here, you know, we can all sit at work home. It was an interesting.
Well, a lot can a percentage.
Yeah.
Office,
not everybody can.
Type.
Yes, I think that's.
So what about, say we do get into panic buying? What can we do beforehand? Because business continuity is all about trying to prepare for things that we honestly believe are going to happen to us. So if we honestly believe this is going to happen, and forget normal public life, think businesses, because obviously the public only get hit when businesses let them down because they can't do it, so the public don't get it. So if we take a step back and we think just on businesses, what can businesses do to prepare if they honestly believe that they can start to see the symptoms of the precondition?
I think there is really, and I think yours is. This is, I suppose, the great argument for resilience in business. And sometimes resilience in business is easy for us to pontificate and tell them about. You know, if you run a very low margin business, I'm thinking more smaller business, big business, low margin, you know, you're struggling already, then if the price of fuel goes up and it's difficult to pass it on to your customers because your customers haven't got tons of money either, you know, you can easily tip yourself into receivership. And even if you recognize that as an issue, it's very difficult to turn around your business model to do it quicker than that. But I do think, you know, we ought to, as business resilience people, business continuity people, have that conversation with our masters there or the heads of business, say, what are we doing? Are there things that we can do now which, you know, do make us more resilient? Because if the price of fuel is going to go up, or it's difficult for people to come from home, or there was a report in Allianz, they put out reports say about where is the next black swans coming from. And you can't anticipate black swans, so I didn't quite like their premise, but that's being splitting hairs. But we say that they're sort of 50% of people who did their kind of survey was talking about global supply chains. That was the big one for there. So I do think, you know, sometimes with risks, we look at these risks and they come, I think it's a bit like that grey rhino we talked about when it comes suddenly towards us, and it's just too complicated, too difficult. And we're just mesmerized by it, and it just comes and runs us over, or hopefully we jump out of the way. But I think you're absolutely right. This sort of this grey rhino is coming towards us of this supply chain, and the canny ones will busy look at their business model and say, either fuel is going to go out, things are going to be more difficult to supply, things are going to take longer, the ships are in the wrong place, or the ships are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz and not coming out, and they still got to go and drop off their cargoes and do this. How is our business going to cope with that? And can we avoid those shocks in there?
See, I think this is where having an understanding of business continuity in its purest form can help.
Yes.
Because I'm a really big believer in MTPD, MBCO. So
Yeah.
if you understand the point in time where you fail, and if you understand the level that you need to provide service delivery, by the time you reach that point, you've got those anchor positions to then do your maths.
Yeah.
Now, because we both work with businesses who have no concept of what they are, and even if they've got them, they don't quite know how they got them because they knew they had
Yeah.
to have them for audit and they didn't work them out properly. But if you've actually worked them out properly, I'm a big believer in those will give you some idea when you see the supply chain and you think, hang on, if those goods didn't get to us for another 14 days, I already know that our MTPD might be 56 days or whatever.
Yeah.
So we could still withstand that, or we couldn't. And if we couldn't, it gives you a bit of a kick up the backside to try and think, well, okay, then what are we going to do?
What we're going to do. Yeah, I think this is a very good sort of from my military days logistics planning, where you say just I need to keep this division or this platoon or whatever it's filled with. They need bullets, they need water, they need fuel, they need all this stuff. And then you have a massive, in the old days, calculation on your spreadsheet or long leisure to work out which ones you need in which order and how many trucks you need to do and how many how many lorry trips they need there and how many lorry trips down there. And you can anticipate, I know they're going to be short. They keep driving and shooting bullets at this stage. They're not going to in 10 days, and they're not going to have any left. And then what do I have to do in my logistics to make that happen? And I think we need to do some of those calculations. Because if you look at the ships that stay to the moves, most of them got a cargo in there, so they need to go somewhere, dump it off, go to the next place, do it, and you know how long that all takes because that's just a straight calculation. So so you can
I like
anticipate.
the idea of. I mean, I'm not very good at maths,
Hmm.
but it's quite often it's mathematics, as
Oh,
you
it is.
brilliantly described then. That you've got 30 troops under your control, and you know that in the first day you spent 4,500 rounds. You know you've got 9,000 rounds available. Oh, that's 2 days. So if we don't get a resupply of ammunition within 2 days, we're dead.
Yeah.
It's maths. Do you think people in business continuity actually understand that a big proportion of this isn't ooh, feeling in my stomach? It's all about people. Actually, it's about maths and an equation and an
Yeah.
understanding of resources is calculable. If you calculate your resources today, your resources to achieve your MTBD and your MBCO, and look at the difference between the two, there you go.
And you can start also having a look at, your cost of fuel, your cost of, if you sell something in a shop and your stuff is quite price sensitive, you can probably work out from the price you've been in for a while has said, actually, the price of fuel goes up to this. I know people have less disposable income, so it's likely my income is going to drop by 10% because, and if I'm very on the margin, and that's my buffer, then you can do that. So there is that kind of margin cost as well in time and motion, but there is also that margin cost in terms of money coming in. And the canny businesses will recognize that and do things about it. And if you can build your resilience, like what was it, what's the names in Egypt when they had the 7 years of filling up Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoats. They 7 years they filled their grain stores up with grain because he anticipated the famine 7 years later go and everyone else was starving, and they didn't starve because they thought about it and they just didn't eat the whole lot. Double eat, they stored it away. So, anticipating that, I think your maths thing is great.
I mean, I think that's really important, and I think the things we obviously need to be mindful about is How long do you wait before you've seen the sign to put those things into place?
Yes.
Is really important. I mean, sometimes people don't even see the signs. They have maybe things ready, but they didn't see it. COVID's a primary example.
Well, I was just about to say exactly the same as you said. It was top right risk. Did anyone do about it? No.
Yeah, and this is our problem: the seeing and perceiving. If we perceive there is going to be a problem, and there's people like us and the listeners who are tuning in because they're interested in this, and they get buy-in from top management to take some more proactive resilience views, tangibles, actually you could limit the impact of these kind of things. Now, I'm just conscious of time. Any final words on this subject?
I think, is the people who see the panic buying, the fuel stations, the supermarkets, the place that goes there. I do think they need to think about how they're going to deal with it, whether it's rationing by say you can only have £10 worth of fuel, putting the price up by 3 times. That won't be very popular, but or restocking or anticipating the restock, or other things, and I'm sure there's other clever retail stuff that they can do, which I don't know, is to be able to do that and to be thinking about this. Because if you go down to the shop and hear there's a panic on for something, you go in the shop and find there's plenty of it, then you don't panic, and that doesn't feed on its sales, and you're in a caveman doesn't come out, and you're going to start panic buying it, then that whole feeds off itself. And when the fuel was there getting a bit scarce about like 4 weeks ago, it kind of died off fairly quickly. Maybe it wasn't because the government said they got lots of fuel, but I think there's more the retailers can do as well.
Yeah. I mean, I noted down 5 things that I think are maybe things to consider. Don't forget, panic buying is driven by confidence, not really supply.
Yeah.
The precondition phase is where risk builds silently and quietly, but if you're listening, you can detect it.
Yeah.
Behavior creates the crisis in reality. So behavior creates the crisis, not generally supply that fails.
Yes.
Food, fuel, and logistics are completely interconnected systems, with fuel being the big one. If we don't get fuel, we haven't got logistics, we haven't got basic food, you haven't got your supplies. And don't forget, business continuity since the dawn of time has been banging the drum about MTPD, MBCO, and your estimation of recovery time objective. And they are tools to manage demand and scarcity. They're not just about disruption. Those figures that we have are amazing management anchor points that we can use throughout the organization and not just in a business continuity perspective.
I think that's wise words, Mr. McAllister. I think it's wise words. No, that's some really good stuff.
First time you've ever said that to me. So please note that, everybody who's listening.
No, but that's I think we need to do those things, and I think keeping our antennas up and just watching and thinking and looking, I think is a very important part of our role.
Well, everybody who's listening, once again, we really appreciate you joining us. If you've enjoyed it, please tell other people about it. Please give us a nice comment, subscribe and share. We're on all major podcast channels now. It's been a pleasure from me, and I will see you next time.
I will see you next time, and stay safe and up to the loft. I think it is for you this afternoon.
Grab that Lou Rowland, send it up to Scotland to you, mate. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, we'll catch you later.